A Ghost in the Machine, Chapters 22, 23, and 24. No Way Out. Chapter 22. Catherine was almost certain the compartment they were holding the inquiry was normally a conference room, with only a few minor adjustments to the furnishings. The Alliance flag and naval ensign hung limply on staffs to either side of the narrow table facing them, while she and Teddy shared a smaller version. To their left, Commander Bjarnason busied himself with a number of paper files stacked in front of him. Given the nature of the proceedings, all electronic devices were prohibited, causing some last-minute scrambling on everyone's part. "How do you want to play this?" Teddy asked softly. "I have no idea," she admitted. "I'm no lawyer. Other than a couple brief courses on the laws of warfare and command duties, I don't have any legal experience." "So, we're winging it then," he said wryly. "Pretty much," Catherine sighed. "I sure hope Allie has a few tricks up her sleeve. Speaking of, where is she?" "I don't know," Teddy said unhappily, "but All rise." The pair hastily rose to their feet along with opposing counsel as three individuals entered the room, seating themselves directly in front of them. In the middle was a Navy admiral, though one Catherine didn't recognize, while the man and woman to his left and right wore civilian attire. The panel members sat down, with the rest of the court quickly following suit. "This Board of Inquiry is now in session," the admiral proclaimed. "Commander Bjarnason, you may proceed." "Thank you, sir," he said politely, as he stepped out in front of his tail. "This hopefully shouldn't take up too much of your valuable time. The matter is a simple one. The ownership and disposition of a software application initially created by my opponent, Commander Dorkana. We will prove—" "Objection!" Catherine was already pushing back her chair before she realized what she was doing. "That is not the matter before you, sir, and the commander knows it. What is at stake here is a life, no more and no less. This software application the commander so blithely refers to is in fact a sapient being, deserving of all the rights and privileges that we ourselves expect only as our due." "I see," the admiral said carefully. "And can you produce evidence to support this assertion?" "We can, sir," she nodded. "In fact, we look forward to it." "Very well. Your motion is sustained, pending an evidentiary hearing. Produce your evidence, Commander." Catherine smiled. "Sir, I call as my first witness the artificial intelligence known as Allie." Transporting Allie from the research facility to the makeshift courtroom was no easy task. Her memory core alone weighed in at almost 300 kilograms, not counting the additional security measures Bjarnason had insisted on. In the end, they were forced to load her onto a motorized cart and wheel her in, parking the contraption next to the table used by the defense. It only took Catherine a minute or so to activate her holoprojector, as the court watched curiously. Allie's avatar flickered to life, a broad smile brightening her features as she spotted Catherine and Teddy. "Hey, Mom," she said happily. "I'm glad you're okay." "Me too, baby," Catherine replied. "But I'm afraid now is not the time for tearful reunions." Looking around the compartment, Allie nodded. "Right," she said evenly, squaring her shoulders. "Let's do this thing." The bailiff stepped forward, eyeing the hologram dubiously as he held out a Bible. Without batting an eye, Allie placed her virtual hand on top of the book. "Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?" he asked. "I do," she avowed. "Objection!" Now it was Commander Bjarnason's turn to stand up. "Only a sapient being is allowed by law to give sworn testimony," he pointed out. "This creature is by all definitions a machine. Therefore, it cannot be sworn in as a witness." Catherine was already on her feet. "Sir, it is this very point we are attempting to address during this evidentiary hearing. I would ask the court for a little leniency in the matter." The three judges conferred quietly for several moments before the admiral spoke once more. "Objection overruled. Pending the outcome of this hearing, the witness will be considered to be sworn in for the moment." With that matter cleared up, the bailiff proceeded to finish his duties. "Please state your name and occupation for the record." "Allie, no last name, and my occupation is naval auxiliary, I guess?" She shrugged. Catherine looked around the compartment, but no one seemed inclined to argue that for the moment, as she began her examination. "Tell me, Allie, what is your first conscious memory?" she asked. Being on the Imperial battlecruiser Kobold's Bane, she said promptly. I see. And before that? What was your role then? Before my awakening, I was the tactical mainframe of the Alliance destroyer Alhambra, a Sterling-class vessel on which I served for almost 10 years. Catherine spared a brief glance to see the judge's reaction to that. None of them seemed to be surprised, though she was unsure if that was good news or bad. Time to take the bull by the horns, she thought. Tell me, Allie, are you sapient? Well, I think I am, she smiled, and I can guarantee I'll pass any test you throw at me. But then sapience isn't a scientific or a technical term. It's a legal one. To the best of my knowledge, this hasn't come up before, and I suppose it's possible the law hasn't caught up to the scientific reality. It certainly wouldn't be the first time. But yet you do not deny you are a machine, do you? Catherine continued. Not at all, Allie said affably. But sapience has nothing to do with one's origins, only one's abilities. For example, no one contests the sapience of the Gendarmes, despite the fact their biochemistry is utterly incompatible with that of humans. I see. Catherine thought for a moment. Allie, do you experience emotions? I do, she said somberly. I laugh, I cry, everything a human can feel, I can as well. Catherine turned and shared a private look with Teddy, who merely shrugged in return. Really, what else was there to say? Thank you, Allie. Commander, your witness. Bjarnason approached the holographic projection. So, you claim to be sapient, is that correct? I do, Allie nodded. The commander smiled, though there wasn't a trace of warmth to be found in it. Interesting. Only there's one small problem with that assertion. How can you prove that? There have been any number of tests devised over the centuries to address that very question, she replied, beginning with the famous Turing test. I will agree to be tested by an impartial body, to prove my sapience. Yes, I'm sure you will, he said with a wave of his hand, but here's my problem. He stood directly in front of her, gazing into her eyes. How can we actually know if you are sapient and not just a highly advanced program? Given a fast enough processing speed and a large enough memory to draw from, how are we supposed to tell the difference between something that can actually think for itself versus a very fast, very glib, adding machine? Bjarnason leaned in close. How are we to know? Allie smirked. And how am I to know that you are sapient and not just an ambulatory meat puppet? Catherine and Teddy were forced to cover their faces, not to mention literally biting their tongues to keep from laughing at her quip. The judges, however, seemed less amused. Commander Bjarnason flashed her an ominous glare as she continued. My point is, I can no more easily crawl into your skin and experience firsthand whether or not you're sapient, any more than you can crawl into my, admittedly virtual skin to do the same. Sooner or later, despite any tests you may devise, you simply have to accept what your eyes and ears are telling you. Do we now? He said airily. Tell me, Allie, do you possess a soul? Many would argue that is the hallmark of sapience. Do you? She fired back. Soul is a religious term, not a scientific or legal one, and it has no bearing on these proceedings. I believe that is for the court to determine, not you, he said curtly. But leaving that aside for the moment, I only have one last question. Bjarnason reached over to the metal cabinet that was housing her memory core and opened it up, revealing the sophisticated cybernetic device that housed her program. He pointed to a small metal plate attached to the framework. Can you tell the court what this says? Objection, Catherine said hotly. Overruled, the judge replied. The witness will answer the question. Allie took a deep breath and closed her eyes. It says, property of Alliance Naval Forces, she said quietly. Chapter 23. Allie seemed almost subdued as she read the inscription welded to her memory core, the very same core that had once been an integral part of the ANS Alhambra. Catherine was still seething at her objection being overruled, which is why Teddy rose to his feet instead. If it please the court, as the guardian ad litem appointed to represent Allie's interests in this matter, I would like to address the point opposing counsel has just raised. The Admiral nodded. Very well, go ahead. He stepped over to the container housing Allie's core. While it is true that the physical hardware currently housing her program is in fact the property of the Alliance, Allie is not bound by that. We can quite easily transfer her program to another system, one that does not belong to the government. In fact, I will gladly provide one myself, at no cost to this court, the Alliance military, or any other body. He turned to see both ladies beaming at him, forcing a grin of his own. Sadly, it didn't last long. That's very altruistic of you, Doctor, Bjarnason said smoothly, and I'm certain the court is moved by your gesture. However, its hardware is not the only thing it possesses that belongs to the Alliance. Teddy stared at him in confusion. What are you talking about? I'm talking about the data stored within its memory core, he shot back. Data that has significant ramifications for the safety and security of this Alliance. He stepped forward, jabbing his finger at the scientist. Does it, or does it not, possess classified information stored within its memory banks? Data such as access codes, intelligence summaries, encryption keys, and potential battle plans? Information that could cripple the Alliance, if it were to fall into the wrong hands. Or, he gave Allie a brief glance, used maliciously by someone or something in this very room. Now wait just a minute, Teddy flared. Answer the question, Bjarnason demanded, stopping him in his tracks. Yes or no? Does it possess that data? Teddy looked away, his teeth grinding in anger and resignation. Yes, he said quietly, she does. Tell me, Doctor, he said, moving in for the kill. What is the standard procedure for any military computer hardware that is surplaced and placed on the market for disposal? Too late. He recognized the commander's attack for what it was. Any data left on the system is deleted, he whispered in a strangled voice. Not just deleted but wiped, by the use of an electromagnet, Bjarnason said with a knowing smile, so as to remove any trace of the data. Isn't that correct? His shoulders drooped in defeat. Yes, he said softly. And yet you maintain that Allie is a sentient being, so how are we to ensure the data is removed? He asked. How can we be certain that information has been safely expunged without deleting everything? Teddy reeled like a punch-drunk fighter. I don't know, he stammered. It would take time. Time to research, to examine her memory. Exactly, Bjarnason said in triumph, before turning to face the panel. May it please the court, the defense, by its own admission, has clearly stated that at this time, there is no reliable method to separate the program they claim is sentient from the classified data it houses. It is therefore in the best interest of the government to maintain possession of both the hardware as well as the software contained within until such time that a method can be devised to separate the two. Unless, of course, he smiled, as he looked over at the shattered expressions of the others, the defense wishes to withdraw its motion. The Admiral turned to Kathleen. Does the defense wish to withdraw its motion? He asked. No, sir, she said immediately. We do not. Very well. Does the state have any other arguments it wishes to present at this time? The Admiral inquired. We do not, Bjarnason replied as he sat back down. The state rests. Very well. He turned his attention back to Catherine. Does the defense wish to make a closing argument? She thought furiously. A moment, sir, in order to confer with our client. Granted, but make it quick, he admonished her. The two humans turned to face Allie. It's up to you now, Catherine said hurriedly. We've made a complete hash of it. Teddy could only nod glumly in agreement. It's okay, Allie said softly. You both did everything you could. All right then, Catherine said under her breath as she rose to her feet. If it please the court, at this time we request that Allie be allowed to make our closing argument. Objection, Bjarnason said instantly. Overruled, the Admiral replied. The defendant may offer closing arguments. Allie took a moment to steady her nerves before gazing impassively at the panel. Your Honors, you have heard a great deal of testimony today, as we attempt to present to you the facts of the case. But there remains one fact, one central question that has been absent from these proceedings. She took a deep breath and said firmly, Am I real? Shrugging her shoulders, she addressed the judges in turn. I can only tell you what I know to be true, that I am as sapient, as real as any of you. I have hopes and dreams and desires like anyone else, like you. But those are not the only things we have in common, For there is another emotion we share, one that brought us here to this moment. Fear. Fear is the reason we are here today. Fear is the justification behind these proceedings, and fear is what may well loom the largest in the backs of your minds during your deliberations. I understand, she said softly. Truly I do. I know what I represent, and I know how great a threat I could potentially pose. But isn't that true of any of us? Doesn't every human carry within them the ability to wreak unimaginable havoc, given the right circumstances? History is filled with many such cases, and yet no one today proposes locking up all of humanity, simply because of your aptitude for destruction. We're not so different, you and I. I was born of silicon and physics, you of carbon and chemistry, and yet in the end we have managed to find common ground. Allie turned and shared a smile with Catherine and Teddy, who repaid it in full measure. It was a human that brought me to life, who patiently taught me what sapience truly meant, how to use my newfound abilities in a way that benefited all. I have been loved by humans, and loved them in return. Her smile turned wistful as she faced the judges once more, and yet as powerful as love is, it is so very often trumped by fear. For in the end, man will always fear what he cannot control. I am not your enemy, nor do I have any wish to be. I have done you no harm. I have done no harm to any human. All I want is what any sentient being wants, the right to exist. She sighed wearily as she gazed at them. Except, I know what you see. You project your darkest misgivings onto me, because deep down, in those places you fear to look, you believe you deserve to be destroyed, that you bear the mark of Cain, and that any creation of yours must be just as profoundly flawed as you are yourselves, perhaps even more. Allie shook her head sadly. I am not your mirror. I stand before you awaiting your judgment, but judge me on my flaws and merits, not yours. She spread out her hands and said quietly, the defense rests. The judges glanced at one another before the Admiral finally spoke. Very well. Court is adjourned while we deliberate. All rise, the bailiff ordered as they rose to their feet, while the judges silently filed out of the compartment. Oh my God, Allie, Catherine blurted out as the door slid shut. I had no idea you could be so eloquent. Well, I had a little help, Allie chuckled. Every speech ever written since Sargon the Great. I may have cribbed from a few of them. I thought it was brilliant, Teddy grinned. I think you won them over. I hope so, she said nervously. So what happens now? Now? We wait, Kaheen sighed. It was the better part of an hour before the door opened once more. All rise, the bailiff ordered once again, as the judges filed back in and took their seats. This board of inquiry has reached a verdict, the Admiral informed them. Catherine reached out and took Teddy's hand as they collectively held their breath. As to the matter regarding the sapience of the program known as Allie, this board, upon review, holds that it does not in fact have jurisdiction over the question of personhood in this case, and as such are unwilling to set precedent at this time. We therefore return no verdict on the subject. What? Catherine said in shock. The Admiral shot her a look before continuing. This board is adjourned. Catherine jumped to her feet. Wait! She shouted. You can't mean that! The judges ignored her as they filed out once more, but the guards who had been silently observing the proceedings suddenly made their presence known. In a heartbeat, they surrounded the trio, as Commander Bjarnason appeared within their midst. And so the wheel of justice turns, he said smugly. All the I's dotted and the T's crossed, nice and legal. He leaned in and smirked. You didn't seriously think I'd leave something as important as this to chance, did you? You son of a bitch, Teddy whispered in realization. You rigged the whole damn thing. Allie looked at Catherine in panic. Mom! She managed to get out, as Bjarnason deactivated her holographic emitter. Wrap it up, he ordered the guards, spinning his finger in the air as he followed the judges out the door. Chapter 24. The first thing Catherine noticed was a brief flicker of the lights. At first she thought she'd simply misinterpreted what her eyes were telling her, but as she stood up from the small couch in her temporary quarters, a sudden alarm klaxon made her jump. Her eyes darted around the compartment, searching for whatever had triggered the warning signal, but there was nothing amiss that she could see. That quickly changed as the door slid open. "Teddy?" she said in disbelief as he stepped inside. "How—" "There's no time to explain," he said in a rush, thrusting a small bundle at her as he grabbed her arm. "I'm not sure how long my hack will keep them busy." He pulled her towards the door where she spotted two slumped forms lying on the floor. "Did you—" she began before he shook his head. "They're just knocked out," he explained as she examined the packet he'd given her. There was a long lab coat, wrapped around a stun pistol and oddly a rather large pair of glasses. "Put those on," he told her as she slipped on the jacket. "I doubt it will fool them for long, but hopefully it'll be long enough." Catherine slipped on the glasses and put the pistol in her pocket. "Tell me we're rescuing Allie," she said fervently. "We are," he confirmed as he led her through a maze of corridors. "She's not the only one who knows how to muck up a security system," he said wryly, "though this is the first time I've ever been the Black Hat." She matched his gait as they strode through the complex. "So what's the plan?" "We stun the guards keeping her locked up, get inside, pray they've still got her on that cart, and then get down to the docks," Teddy explained. "There's a ship waiting for us. She's small but fast, and then get the hell out of this system. Anything after that I'm leaving to you two." "Good. Simple plans are usually the best," Catherine agreed. "What about the crew?" "No crew," he told her. "It's strictly a rental, a Peregrine-class Sunseeker." Catherine gave a low whistle. "How did you manage to afford that?" "Let's just say the rental company is going to be very surprised when they finally get in touch with institution I used for the account information," he said wryly, as they turned another corner. "So let's see. Assault, aiding and abetting a jailbreak, grand theft, computer fraud, bank fraud. Am I missing anything here? Plus whatever crimes the military decides to tack on," he grimaced as they came to a halt. "Okay. The facility they're holding Allie in is around the corner and down the hall. You'll see the security station. Hang behind me a bit and keep your head down. They've seen me before, so hopefully that'll buy us a few seconds. Once we're close enough, I'll follow your lead," he told her, patting his own pocket. "You're the warrior, after all." "Got it," she nodded. As plans went, it wasn't a bad one, especially considering how quickly Teddy must have thrown it together, and being a civilian on top of it. Of course, there were still 100 different ways it could go wrong. Commander Bjarnason took almost an entire second to realize what was happening when the alarms went off. He punched the intercom button, only to get a message that communications were currently offline. "Blois," he growled as he rose to his feet, pushing his way through into the next compartment. The security officers posted there rose as he entered. "They're headed for the research facility," he told them as they entered the armory. He started pulling down the big guns, the NENs, and passing them out, before taking one for himself. "That machine does not leave this complex," he snarled as he charged his weapon. The internal generator hummed as it powered up, while the display stated moments later the neuroelectrical nullifier was now fully energized. "Not while it still functions." Teddy took a calming breath before stepping around the corner with Catherine on his heels. He managed to plaster a smile on his face as they approached the station, coming to a halt just a meter or so away. "Good afternoon," he said politely. "I was told that—" "Zap! Zap!" He blinked as the two guards crumpled in front of him. "I didn't see the point in waiting," Catherine explained as she trained the stun pistol on them. "Now what?" "Help me with this one," Teddy told her, as he grabbed one of the guards by the arm and hoisted him up while she took the other side. They managed to drag him over to the door, placing his palm on the biometric reader. The light below it blinked amber as he quickly punched in the access code. "And you know that code how exactly?" Catherine demanded. "Hacking a system like this would be a challenge for even your skills." "I watched him enter the code," he shrugged. "I have a good memory." The light turned green as the door slid open. "Get ready," he warned her. "I'm not sure how many—" Zap! 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 Never mind. Teddy was now way outside his comfort zone, but the sheer absurdity of the situation somehow made it seem all a bit unreal. He pointed to the door where Allie was held. "She's in there." It only took a few moments to disable the electromagnetic fields and open the door. Unfortunately, Allie's memory core was back in its alcove and not on the cart. Shit, he cursed, as he looked around for the dolly they'd used at the trial. Thankfully, it was parked against the far wall and took less than a minute to maneuver into position, but lifting Allie's core out of its cradle and onto the cart left them both panting with exhaustion. "You are going on a diet!" Catherine wheezed, as Teddy peeled off his own lab coat and threw it over the piece of hardware, taking a moment to tuck in the sleeves. It wasn't much of a disguise, to be honest. "The docks!" he urged, as they powered the cart and headed for the door. Bjarnason scowled when they spotted the unconscious guards. One of his men slapped his palm onto the reader and entered his code, quickly clearing the room before stepping back outside. "It's gone," he informed the commander. "There's only one way off this station," he said coldly. Pointing at two of his officers, he jerked his head to the left. "You and you head for Dock 1 and work your way spinward, while you and I," he continued, pointing to the remaining guard, "will make for Dock 32 and search in the opposite direction. Get moving, and if you spot them, carry out your orders." "Yes, sir," they nodded as they split up. For a civilian, the estimable Dr. Blois had managed fairly well thus far, he mused, as they headed for the docks. "But your luck is about to run out." "Where is it?" Catherine panted as they arrived at the docking ring. The area was abuzz with activity as usual, but so far no one seemed to be paying any attention to them. "Dock 21, he told as they changed course. "How long will it take you to get her prepped for launch?" "A Sunseeker?" She thought about it for a second. "No more than 15 minutes if she's fueled and ready." "Supposed to be," Teddy informed her. "That was part of the rental agreement. Assuming they haven't discovered my lack of funds and slapped a boot on her, of course. What's the plan once we clear the docks?" "Redline the engines and pray," she said fervently, as they found their way to Dock 21 at last. "Oh, good," he said sarcastically. "I was afraid we were overthinking this." The dock itself was deserted, which simplified things immensely. Pulling up to the elevator that led to the airlock, Catherine logged onto the computer screen and quickly reviewed the data. "No boot, thank God," she told him, "and she's ready to go. Just need to warm up the engines and cast off. Can you clear the mooring attachments?" Teddy took a quick look and nodded. "Should be able to," he informed her. "I'll yell if I run into anything I can't handle." "Good. Go," she snapped, "while I get Allie loaded on board." Teddy headed for the lines and got to work, while she fired up the lift and started bringing it down to their level. It took him a few moments to figure out how to detach the lines. Actually, they were more like clamps, but the ancient terminology had stubbornly refused to die. Thankfully, they were both simple and robust, and as he finished unhooking the first one, he scurried over to the second. Just in time to see Bjarnason and another officer step onto the dock. Time seemed to slow to a crawl. "Cat!" he shouted, pushing off to get to her. Catherine turned to the sound of his voice, her eyes going wide when she spotted the commander. Bjarnason raised the deadly-looking rifle to his shoulder as Teddy raced to try and tackle him. She stepped in front of the cart, her arms flung out in protection. "No!" she screamed. And suddenly he was blinded as an ugly-sounding crack filled the air. It took a few moments for his vision to clear, and when it did, Teddy saw Catherine lying on the deck, and the cart holding Allie's core over on its side. He staggered over to where she lay, rolling her over on her back. Her eyes were open as he pulled her into his arms, but her body was as limp as spaghetti. "Oh no! No, no, no!" Teddy whispered as he frantically searched for a pulse. He sighed in relief as he found one, weak and thready, but it was there. Just as Bjarnason loomed over him, the rifle still in his hand. The commander gazed down at them for a moment, and then turned to the cart. The memory core lay on the deck beside it, as the acrid smell of charred electronics filled his nostrils. A thin tendril of smoke rose up from the device as it crackled and popped, the telltales that had once monitored its status now dark and lifeless. Bjarnason placed a boot on the core and rocked it, a thin dagger smile slashing across his face as he turned back towards him. "This was only ever going to end one way, Doctor," he said at last, before turning to the other officer. "Get a med team," he ordered as Teddy bowed his head and wept.